Good evening. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Dennis Ward. Following a series of high-profile incidents of police violence against people of color, RCMP Commissioner Brenda Lucki is coming under fire. Todd Lamarand has federal reaction, starting with the Prime Minister.
Justin Trudeau was clear in his words at a press conference. Systemic racism is in all police forces, including the RCMP.
So it's a difficult and even an uncomfortable conversation. And there are people who highlight that, well, it's painting all our institutions with a negative brush, and it's not being proud of the Canada that we built and that our ancestors have built. Nonsense. Canadian exceptionalism isn't thinking that we're the best. It's knowing that we could be. It's knowing that this country remains a work in progress, that we can and we must do better.
Trudeau was responding to RCMP Commissioner Lucki's interview on CTV. She says she struggles with the meaning of systemic racism, but is trying to reform policies that may unintentionally disadvantage some groups.
When I think of it in those terms, I think it's not completely systemic. But then when I think of it in terms of unconscious bias, I think we're not immune to that, and there is unconscious bias in our organization, and we work hard to work through it.
Trudeau was also asked if he believes Lucki can root out racism in the RCMP.
I have confidence in Commissioner Lucki, and I know that the changes that she has already begun to bring to our National Police Force and the work that we're going to be doing together in the coming months is going to make a huge difference in combating systemic racism and reducing it in this country.
Indigenous Services Minister Mark Miller was also asked about Lucki.
I will not judge the Commissioner on a series of interviews that she made. Yesterday, I'll judge her on the promises that she made to Indigenous peoples when it comes to my portfolio. We must acknowledge, the government has acknowledged that there is institutional racism in Canada. The RCMP is not immune.
You are the agents of change.
Senator Murray Sinclair took to social media to say this: if Commissioner Lucki believes this, then she does not understand what systemic discrimination is. Systemic discrimination is unconscious and institutionalized. It's about a system's rules, procedures, and practices. Get rid of the racists, and you will still have a racist system. Todd Lamarand, APTN National News, Ottawa.
You are the ones who are going to...
Despite giving interviews to several media outlets this week, RCMP Commissioner Brenda Lucki has been declining APTN's requests since Monday. The RCMP says no one else is available at this time. Well, several Indigenous women's organizations in Quebec are banding together to demand action on their allegations of police violence. In an open letter, they ask Indigenous Services Minister Mark Miller to organize a national discussion on the accountability of police forces. The letter also expresses outrage over a recent incident when Montreal police responded to a call involving a Cree woman in the midst of a mental health crisis with 17 officers and a canine unit. In a statement to APTN, Miller said, "We need to review training, recruiting, and ensure representation of Indigenous peoples in the police, and we require strong leadership to hold officers accountable for their actions." Algonquin Grand Chief Verna Polson is one of the letter's co-authors.
All those nice words and nice thoughts and speeches that they give on a daily basis, we need action. And like I said, we're ready. We're ready to sit down and talk. And for a nation approach, national approach, well, for sure, that's well overdue.
We'd like to hear what you think about the ongoing discussion around policing. Here's how to continue that conversation. You can send your emails to news@aptn.ca. Find us online at aptnnews.ca and on youtube.com/aptnnews. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. for the latest Indigenous news. Indigenous Services Canada announced new COVID-19 relief measures today. $130 million will go towards supporting Indigenous businesses. The money is meant for community-owned and micro-businesses that do not already qualify for government support. A portion of the fund will also support Indigenous businesses in the tourism sector.
We want to make sure that they are still there on the other side of this pandemic. This funding will seek to meet needs. For example, communities could use this funding to assist micro-entrepreneurs, including home-based businesses and essential economic activities such as hunters and artisans who are ineligible for mainstream measures. Funding could be used for various activities such as community economic development services, capacity building, planning, and retrofitting of businesses for reopening.
Statues of what were once considered great men are coming down across the United States. Yesterday, a Christopher Columbus statue was toppled in St. Paul, Minnesota. Desiree Denomi is a Cree woman living in the U.S. She describes the moment the statue hit the ground.
Really shocked that it came down so easily. One of the things is like when I heard the crash, it just kind of boom, and it was powerful. That the sound that it made was just like, gave me chills down my spine.
And as protests topple statues around the world, thousands in Montreal are petitioning for Canada's first Prime Minister to be next. The monument of Sir John A. Macdonald stands at Place de Canada in Montreal. It's been vandalized several times over the years. Macdonald created the residential school system in this country. Montreal's mayor says she's open to feedback but won't be making a quick decision. Time for a quick break, but stick around. There's more to come. Here's a look at Friday's weather forecast starting on the East Coast. Showers and 18 for Halifax and St. John's. 9 with rain in Nain. 24 and showers for Happy Valley, Goose Bay. 22 and showers in Montreal and Saguenay. 20 in Toronto. Showers and 20 in Ottawa. 18 and sunny for Thunder Bay, 15 under sunny skies in Sioux Lookout, 10 in Churchill, 19 for Puckatawagan, 20 in Winnipeg, 21 under the sun in Brandon, 27 in Saskatoon and Regina, 29 for North Battleford, 23 in Stony Rapids, 20 for La Ronge. Welcome back. A family is speaking out 2 years after their young daughter was allegedly forced into a genital exam due to what they believe was racial stereotyping by an emergency room doctor. Brittany Hobson has that story.
An entire Indigenous family in Ontario is still dealing with what they say was a traumatic trip to the hospital 2 years ago. The event happened in 2018 at a hospital in northeastern Ontario. The girl was 7 years old at the time.
She had leaned her body weight on my child and was trying to get her legs open. I remember just hearing my child objecting and her ignoring it, dismissing it, ignoring it completely, and just performing this exam. And the only thing that really stands out is the look on my child's face when it was over.
APTN is not identifying the family, the physician, or the hospital in order to protect the child's identity. The family complained to the College of Physicians and Surgeons of Ontario shortly after the incident occurred. They took their daughter to the ER because she was showing signs of a urinary tract infection. My
child specifically that I brought to the emergency room had repeated issues with urinary tract infections due to a biological condition that she has. It's a connective tissue disorder that can sometimes affect the bladder.
The mother says the doctor began asking her daughter some questions regarding a previous stomach ache. The mother then asked to speak with the doctor in private. She says she tried to redirect the conversation about a possible UTI, but that's when the doctor started asking some concerning questions.
Do you and your husband fight in front of your child? And I was alarmed by the line of questioning because I couldn't put together what a UTI had to do with my marital relationship.
She says the doctor also asked whether the child had been sexually abused. The mother, who has a background in social work, believes this line of questioning was due to racial profiling.
The only other explanation for giving a domestic violence screening to someone with a UTI would be based on some sort of unconscious bias, in my opinion. That's what I was thinking. So I became afraid.
The mother says she felt she couldn't object to the genital examination.
In my head, I was thinking, what's the lesser of two evils? Let her look, or to have Children's Aid come in and interview my entire family and go through a Children's Aid process that, again, is also a systemically unjust system toward Indigenous peoples.
The examination revealed no evidence of sexual abuse, and a urine test would later show the child did indeed have a UTI. The father, who was not in the room at the time, says his wife was visibly upset afterwards.
She was quietly sobbing, just trying to deal with what was going on, and I had no idea exactly what happened in the room. All I know is that it was pretty serious.
APTN was denied an interview with the physician. The college did not refer the case to a hearing, which would determine if the physician should be disciplined. The college denied an interview request as well. Instead, in a statement, they said, "The CPSO is committed to doing its part to address systemic racism, which continues to be a significant issue across the healthcare system." The family appealed the college's decision to the province's review board. That's when lawyer Sarah Beamish took on the case. Beamish says cases like this highlight the racial biases Indigenous families experience when interacting with the medical system.
It puts them at a heightened risk of interventions that harm them and harm their families.
Last month, the family attended a hearing where Beamish argued the college's investigation was not reasonable. She notes lack of resources make it hard for families to challenge these decisions.
These systems, like these non-court processes that are supposedly, so sort of public friendly, they're really difficult to navigate without legal counsel. And on the other side of it, you have the doctors in these cases who usually get specialized high-priced lawyers.
Beamish is representing the family for free. A GoFundMe page has been set up to help cover some of the costs. The mother says the experience has been traumatizing for her daughter.
She has anxiety attacks. She's not a child. She is all of a sudden, overnight, forced to grow up. I don't recognize her anymore and hope that we'll find her again.
Brittany Hobson, APTN National News.
As you just heard, the family of the 7-year-old girl says their daughter was traumatized by an exam conducted by a physician. APTN Investigates producer Holly Moore broke that story, and she's here with us now. Holly, thanks for joining us. Can you tell us what the allegations are?
So these allegations involve a 7-year-old girl who had gone in for a routine urinary tract infection to a hospital. The girl had gone many times before. She had frequent UTIs due to a medical condition that she had. When she walked in, the physician immediately began to ask the family about domestic violence in their family, sexual abuse in their family, and according to the mother, who I interviewed for this story, she insisted upon a physical and genital exam of the child. So they are alleging that racial bias was at work because of the questions around child abuse and domestic assault. The mother also believes that, there was a lot of fear on her part that Children's Aid was going to get called in if she refused the exam, and she really wanted the College of Physicians and Surgeons to know that her child never consented to this exam.
What does the doctor have to say?
Well, the doctor, we did reach out to the doctor's lawyers for an interview with the physician. She declined. This case has now gone to the Health Professions Review and Appeal Board of Ontario. And what they're looking at now is to see if a complaint that the family had made to the College of Physicians and Surgeons of Ontario should be overturned. And so should this complaint go back to the committee? So I was only able to glean the physician's response through the submissions by her lawyer. So I sat in on that public hearing on May 28th, and essentially she says there was no racial bias, that it was medically appropriate for her to do the clinical exam. She doesn't remember the exam in the same way that the mother recalls the exam, so there's a differing of recollection there. She committed in the complaint process to review her own consent practices as well as look at ethical genital examining in children, and she was apologetic at the time. So this family really wants to go to the next step because they say that this reveals a larger issue about how Indigenous families face medical harm when they intersect with the medical system.
Why are the family coming forward now?
Well, the family's coming forward for that reason. They think that this is a bigger issue and that the processes to complain about a doctor, generally across Canada, are very inaccessible to vulnerable and or Indigenous families. And so they wanted to at least, let the community know that you can go through this process and perhaps get some answers about what happened to you. They've also started a GoFundMe because their lawyer, Sarah Beamish, is working for free right now. So Sarah was involved in a Jordan's Principle application. She was involved in these numerous legal submissions that have to happen, and she's working for free. So the family is really turning to the community for some support on that.
Holly, any word on how the girl is doing?
Well, this is the most heartbreaking part of this story, is that at the center of this story is a young girl. And, her mother relayed that she's withdrawn. She doesn't give hugs the way she used to. She's especially afraid of physicians and female physicians. There's one quote that she said, I hope we find her again. And I just thought that's really what this comes down to, is some sense that she could see change. Yeah.
Sad stuff. Well, Holly, big story, important story, so appreciate you speaking with us about it here.
Yeah, thanks so much, Dennis.
Time for another break. We'll be right back. Here's a look at the rest of your Friday forecast, picking back up in northern Alberta. 24 with showers in Fort McMurray, 22 in Grand Prairie, 33 above with rain in Medicine Hat, 30 and showers in Lethbridge. Rain and 18 for Vancouver and Campbell River. 21 and rain for Fort Nelson, 17 and showers in Prince George. 22 with showers for Old Crow and Mayo, 20 in Whitehorse. 22 with rain for Fort Liard and Trout Lake, sunny and 19 in Yellowknife. +4 for Sax Harbor, 3 above in Pawlatuck. 6 for Baker Lake, Arviette, Whale Cove, and Repulse Bay. 1 in Resolute, 2 in Igloolik. Welcome back. Time for some lighter news now about a father and son duo who are now part of an exclusive club, as both are being inducted into Canada's Sports Hall of Fame. While they may not be the first father-son team, they are the first to be inducted in the same sport. Our reporter Daryl Stranger has more.
Ross Powless and his son Gaylord Powless are from the Six Nations of the Grand River First Nation in Ontario. Ross played professional lacrosse in the 50s and 60s. His son Gaylord played in the 60s and 70s. Already members of the Canadian Lacrosse Hall of Fame, both are now Canadian sports royalty for being inducted into Canada's Sports Hall of Fame. Ross was inducted this year as a builder, joining Gaylord, who was inducted in 2017 in the athlete category. They make up the 13th and 14th Indigenous athletes to be inducted in the 65-year history of the Hall.
Well, we're just overjoyed, thrilled to hear it. I mean, it's a big honor, it's a big award, and we're very, very happy for him. He would have been very happy to receive it, and as well as knowing that him and Gaylord both received the same award, he would have been very happy.
While they may not have played with each other, Ross did coach 6 of his sons, including Gaylord, in a Nanaimo tournament where they won the championship. Both are household names in the lacrosse world and are arguably 2 of the best to ever pick up a lacrosse stick.
In my 65 years, and they were some of the best, and I mean, others have in past times, my dad was compared to the Gordie Howe, and Gaylord was compared to the Wayne Gretzky of hockey. They simply excelled at the sport, and I don't know where it comes from. It's part of our heritage. It's a courageous game. It's an Iroquois game, but from an early age, they both excelled at it, and it just seemed to come natural.
Cheryl Bernard is the president and CEO of Canada's Sports Hall of Fame and says along with sporting ability, athletes need to have excelled away from the sport to be inducted. Something Ross and Gaylord strive to achieve with coaching and working back in Six Nations after their playing days.
You're being awarded the Order of Sport honor for what you've done beyond sport, for how you've given back to your community, for how you've been a role model, a leader, how you've helped build your sport. It's kind of the full story of these Hall of Famers rather than just the sport piece. It's the entire story about what they've done for their country. And I think what that does is it makes even individuals who are not sports enthusiasts or even sports fans, it makes them value Hall of Famers even more because of what they provide and give back.
Gaylord passed away in 2001, 2 years before his father Ross passed in 2003. The 2020 induction ceremony will be postponed until next year and will be celebrated along with the 2021 class. Daryl Stranger, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
And we want to leave you tonight by wishing a very happy birthday to an Inuk elder. Kapik Atagutsiak, an elder from Arctic Bay, Nunavut, is celebrating her 100th birthday today. Atagutsiak has been called a living human treasure. She was honored earlier this year at a ceremony at the Canadian Museum of History recognizing Inuit efforts in the Second World War. You can read more about her life on our website, aptnnews.ca. Kapik, from all of us here at APTN, have a happy birthday. And that is your APTN National News for this Thursday. You can find Kapik's story and much more over on our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Dennis Ward. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great night.